So my son was scheduled to get his hair cut one day. Now, before he went to the barbershop, we had just talked about how he was going to get his hair cut. So I have twin boys, and one of my sons still had a high top, and he had been thinking about getting some starter locks. And so we had been talking about this for maybe like a couple of years, and I didn't get an opportunity to do it last school year for him. So it is something that he really wanted done this school year. So we had talked about, reaching out to some people to try to get some quotes and, just trying to figure some things out. So in the meantime, I'm like, well, if you want to keep your high top, you're just going to get your sides cut down. My other son, he had already got his high top cut off like some months prior, but his hair had grown out, and so he had like a little afro, but he wanted to get like a low taper fade. So anyway, we had this discussion right before he went to the barbershop. So maybe I'll say, they had their appointment that was set up, and so I expected for them to, go to the shop because they're actually with family. So my grandmother had taken them to the barber shop, and so I knew what time the appointment was. They were supposed to get dropped off, get their hair cut. Usually, my grandmother send me pictures, whatever the case is, and then we just move on. Now, at this particular time, I get a phone call and my son is like, can I get my hair cut off? And so at the time, I'm thinking it's my son with the afro because he wanted to start his hair back over because he also wanted to get starter locks or get like dreads or whatever. And I wasn't really sure what he was trying to do with his hair. And so I can see where he might have wanted to get his hair cut. The other son who wanted to keep his high top and get the starter locks, like that was confirmed. So I didn't even think twice about the fact that it was him. And I normally don't even get them mixed up because I know their voices. But this particular day, he called and just asked, "Can I get my hair cut off?" So I'm like, I guess, like, and I'm like, but we just talked about this. Like, why are you calling me asking me about this? And we had already talked about what haircut you're supposed to get. But I'm not really trying to go back and forth with him because he's on the barber's phone. So I'm just like, go ahead. Because I'm like, in my mind, I'm going to have this conversation with him when he leaves. The barber like, okay, bet. We move on. I get a picture, and it's actually the son that had the high top. And my grandmother sends me the picture of him with his hair cut off. I don't even like the haircut. But outside of me not liking the haircut, it was the fact that where did we go wrong in this conversation? Because you were supposed to be getting dreads, and yet you just got your hair cut off. But it's the fact that you called me and asked me this question when right before you went to the barbershop, I thought we had clarity. So I'm confused. So now I call my son and I'm like, what's going on? Like, we just talked about you getting dreads. Why would you call me, ask me this question? And I was so confused because I'm like, I thought you were your brother, which is why I said yes. So in my mind, I'm like, well, it must have been meant to be because I typically don't get y'all mixed up. And this particular time I did. But it's the fact that you even had the audacity to call me and ask me that question after we just talked about this. Now, according to him, when he got to the barbershop, right, his brother goes first and he get his hair cut, right? He looks clean. So, he looking at his haircut like, oh, I guess he kind of like contemplate, like if he want to go ahead and cut it off. But mind you, my other son has like a little like a little short afro, and he got a low taper. So you're not even going to hit your hair. It's not going to look like his. But not only that, his hair texture is not the same as his brother's. Like they have two totally different hair textures. So it wasn't going to look the same because of that reason as well. But I guess, obviously we already talked about what we talked about. So he was just going to go ahead and get what we talked about because he wanted the dreads. But he's saying that there were guys in a barbershop that asked him, why, like basically, why do you still have your high top? And he was just like, oh, because, I want to get, try to get some, start dreads or whatever. And I guess the guys telling him, I don't know if this was like just other dads or this was like another one of the barbers, apparently not the barber who cut their hair. But they're like, oh, well, I don't know if your hair gonna look right because of your texture of hair and all this type of stuff. So it's almost like they were discouraging him with his original mindset towards it. And so because of what the guys were saying about him, and my other son, he he like to do too much. Okay. So he probably, when he heard those guys saying that, I bet you he fed into that conversation, because apparently, my other son was just like, I mean, if you want to go get your haircut, then that's on you. That's on you. I mean, you gonna do it. That's on you. So he feeding into it and carrying on. And so now he kind of feel pressured, like, almost like his brother is like, kind of like pushing him, but like trying to be subliminal with it. And then the guys talking about it. So he didn't want to feel secure in making a decision on his own, which is why he called me. Now, had I known it was him, I would have said, no, I already told you what we're supposed to be doing. Don't call me with that. Click. But I didn't know that it was him. So I said, yeah. So now, because I said yes, he got to go through with it at that point. So anyway, I ended up calling a barber, and obviously it wasn't anything that he could do, or it wasn't his fault because I did give permission. But I'm just like, I just feel like at the end of the day, he shouldn't come into a barbershop to come get his hair cut. And then you got this other barber or other people talking to him and trying to convince him to cut his hair. And I wasn't there to protect him or to take up for him or anything at that point. So at the end of the day, I just felt like, again, like him being put in a position like that as a 12-year-old kid, and he kind of feeling like, oh, well, this what they saying, maybe I'm not going to look right with them, or all this type of stuff or whatever. So it was just a talk that I had to have with him about having his own mind. And that, at the end of the day, people are going to post their own views on you and say, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. And I'm sitting here like, if a white person can get dreads and they can lock their hair, then what makes you think this black kid can't? I don't care if his hair texture may not be like other, kids' textures of hair or whatever the case was or whatever they were trying to say. But at the end of the day, he can still lock his hair, right? There's different methods to locking hair, right? And so one method may not work, but another one may. It just all depends, or it could just take longer. Like he might have to, whatever the time period that it would normally take for a hair to lock, it might take a little bit longer for that process, right? But I'm sure there was something that would be able to work for him. I just hadn't really talked to anybody at that time for anybody to do a consultation on his hair. But I had to have a talk with him because at the end of the day, he's getting older. And I'm like, that's not going to be the only time that somebody's going to have something to say. And ironically, maybe a couple years ago, we were at another barber shop, and I had told the barber that who was cutting my boy's hair to kind of shave a little. This is when they did have their high tops, so they might have been like in the 5th grade or something. And I'm like, I wanted him to kind of even out their high top because it was like breaking off and started to look a little straggly or whatever the case is. And so another barber in there, I kind of like told him, hey, can you, I was explaining to the guy what to do. He said, okay, he understood. And I stepped back outside to go into my car while the boys were in the shop. And I guess one of the other barbers started like saying something to my kids. Now, again, they're like in 5th grade. I guess he was taking it that I was telling the barber to cut their high top off. And so he was carrying on about, why I'm, telling the barber to cut their high top off. Like, oh, they grew their hair out. And he carrying on about it, even so much to come outside and kind of like seemingly question me about it. And I didn't even know what he was talking about. And it wasn't until when we left when my kids told me that he was saying stuff in the shop. So it's so crazy how you got one person carrying on like, it takes a long time for a kid to grow his hair, and, you go to cut his hair off and all that type of stuff. And that's not even what I said. But then you have other barbers saying, "Oh, I don't know if it's like because of an age thing or what," but they're saying, "Oh, why are you not cutting off your hair, your high top or whatever," and trying to encourage him to go a different route with his hair. Um, but regardless of the situation, I had to tell him, like, you have to, think for yourself, because people have you strung from the left to the right. If you don't have your own mind and you're not secure in what it is that you want, you will fall for anything. That's the same stuff that I see now on social media, where people don't have their own mind. They get on social media. They let other people with platforms, because they got a podcast or they have followers and subscribers and all these different things, to try to dictate how they think. They want somebody else to think for them. They just find somebody else who seem like they got it all together, and then they start to follow that person in their way of thinking, in their mindset, not even, oh, excuse me, once questioning the legitimacy of a person, and their values, right? You don't even know this person's values, you don't know their principles, you don't know anything really about them. It's just, this person sounds good. Again, there might be popularity behind it, but, and this is the same thing I try to tell my kids now, is that you're going to have people who may seem like they know what they're talking about, right? And I guess even when you think about the guy in the shop, if it was a barber, he's probably thinking like, oh, this is a barber, so the barber must know what he's talking about. And that's not always the case. There's always going to be critics. There's always going to be people that, will say things to you, and they're just posting their own views on you. It's not the fact that what they're saying is true, or the fact that it's law. And so it was just really a learning lesson, I'm sure, for him, because he was really emotional about it. And like I told him, I'm like, at the end of the day, what's done is done. Like, your hair is gone. I don't know how long it's going to take for you to grow it back, because he had it since he was a young kid. And we kept it with the intention on, him start his dreads. And so I'm like, outside of this situation, this may even happen when it comes to other kids. And I had been noticing little things with him, especially when kids are young. He's in middle school, and they are influenced by other kids and influenced by the things that they see, and all the things that's around them, especially when it comes to, the clothes and stuff that kids are wearing, especially these backpacks, the spray ground, and different, the shoes and stuff kids wearing now, and, all these little gadgets and stuff, the Beats headphones, all this type of stuff. And so, even at his age, I'm having to teach him that these things are not what makes you who you are, right? You have your own style, do your own thing, right? You be the leader, you be the trendsetter, you be the person that does what you want. It's okay to see somebody be like, oh, I dig that, I like that. But not so much because everybody got it and you're just trying to fit in with everybody else, right? Have your own mind, think for yourself. What is it that you want? And maybe you could be asking yourself that question. What is it that you want? Is there somebody else in your life that's telling you that you can't do something, right? You might have family. Maybe it's something that you're trying to branch out and do, right? Because, it could be you're trying to start this business, get into entrepreneurship or something you're trying to do. And your family wants you to be in a space of security. And so sometimes family may say things to you because, again, they're projecting themselves on you, and they think that what they're saying to you is a way of protection, like they're protecting you from something. But if your mind is set on, hey, this is what I want to do, then what are you going to do? What decision are you going to make, right? Are you going to stick with your mind and what it is that you want to do, or what you feel like you're being called to do? Or are you going to listen to somebody else, right, and keep you in this cycle or position that they're in? Some people want you to stay at their level, right? They don't want to see you go higher than them. They don't want you to see them. They don't want to see you doing better than them. So sometimes they will tell you those things because they want to see you at a certain level and don't want to see you elevating beyond that. But you have to have your own mind and have to be able to think for yourself and what it is that you want, regardless of the naysayers, regardless of people saying, oh, that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to start that detailing business. You're not going to be able to start that landscaping business. You're not going to be able to write that book. you're not going to be able to, get into medical school or get into this university or college that you want to get into. They're going to tell you all these different reasons why it's not going to work. Oh, I tried this and this didn't work for me. I don't care if you did try it. The same thing when it comes to my son. How you going to count my son out? And it's not like he tried it already, or you know what I'm saying, or he had already had them in his head. And they say, hey, brother, how long you done had, a little twist in your head? Oh, he done had it in for a year and they never locked. And then it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to lock in if you don't had them in for a year already. Like, it's one thing when you already tried something and then it may not have worked. And maybe, again, that doesn't mean that you've counted out. You might have to try something differently. Or maybe maybe you tried it and it's just not going to work. But you tried it yourself first. It's not that you just took somebody else's word for it and then you counted yourself out before you even got started. So at the end of the day, I even take that lesson from my son's situation myself to know that, dang, people be out here trying to tell you to, like I said, you got the one dude saying, why you cut your hair off? Don't cut your hair. Then you got the dude over here saying, you should cut your high top off. Like, well, which one is he? So that just tells you you'll have this person over here telling you one thing, somebody else telling you something else. So at the end of the day, you have to have your own mind, figure out what is it that you want, and you got to chase that, and you do it how you want to do it. And you don't even have to do it the way somebody else wants you to do it, right? There are different blueprints and there are proven methods. And so it's nothing wrong with, being able to, get mentorship or coaching or something to kind of help you along the journey. But at the same time, you do it within your own pace. You do it based off of, how you see fit, based off of your situation, and not just be out there jumping out doing stuff because of how somebody else did it. Point blank, period. Right? So the lesson today is have your own mind, think for yourself, figure out what it is that you want, and follow that particular path. Obviously, with God's help, because you don't want to exclude God out of this process. That's a whole other issue, right? So it's obviously, allowing God to guide your footsteps in this journey, but at the same time, not allowing other people, the naysayers, to deter you away from your purpose and your plan. I'll see you in the next video. Y'all be blessed.